Hi, I am Anna Marie Barchana, and my report is about the contemporary questions of corporate ethics. The subject of corporate ethics is an ever evolving theme. Sometimes companies and the individuals in those companies cross the line and commit acts that are unethical, immoral, or illegal. Society has attempted to erect barriers to prevent these activities and happening by passing laws and regulations, expecting a strict code of ethics and conduct and providing measures of a firm's social contribution. Depending on which party is in power in Washington, laws and regulations are relaxed because they are bad for business or they are strengthened to protect the people. Unfortunately, whatever the legal climate, violations of society standards and expectations continue to occur, and it's critical to recognize that laws represent the minimum ethical standard tolerated by a society. Firms committed to ethical business practices must start by recognizing that just because an action is legal, it does not mean it is ethical. Strategists understand the importance of this distinction because it will be the organization's stakeholders and not the legal system that will decide if the firm is satisfactorily ethical. For example, the 2020 boycott by advertisers of Facebook was a reaction to Facebook's failure to take a more active position on hate speech, but Facebook's decision did not break any laws by Fong 2020. This leads to questions about contemporary corporate ethics. In a globe economy where US companies are competing against cell phones from South Korean companies and Belgian chocolates, ethical questions arise as the best path for a company to follow. While companies stick to their core value statements when ethical decision making gets tough, some of these questions are explored below. The first contemporary ethical questions are the bottom of the pyramid mini case. According to Prahlad 2019, in 2017, 8.6% of the world population controlled 86.3% of global wealth. This disparity continues to increase. This left about 3.5 billion people at the bottom of the pyramid, or BOP, making $10,000 or less annually. This group has largely been ignored by business, assuming they did not have the means to purchase goods other than subsistence items. Some companies are recognizing that this market of nearly half the world's population may be a viable market, and in doing so, provide the world's poor with access to low-cost products that would improve the quality of their daily lives. There are three factors causing the increased interest in this market. First, the rise in income of this group in the last several decades. Second, the widespread use of cell phone technology among the world's poor, lowering the cost of communication and learning. Banking is even done by cell phone in some poor countries. The last one is the rise of corporate social responsibility and creating shared value philosophies among companies in richer nations. According to Simanis 2012, companies entering this market have used the strategy of low price, low margins, high volumes in attempts to gain profitability. But this strategy required approximately 30% market penetration to be successful. Procter & Gamble launched its PUR water purification powder on a large scale with this strategy but failed, not achieving sufficient penetration and volumes. DuPont attempted the same strategy selling protein powder packets to fortify foods but failed for the same reason. There are criticisms of BOP strategies that extend beyond their failure to achieve market penetration. These BOP critics argue that the targeted marketing of the world's poorest people is exploitative and will systematically keep the poor in poverty by pushing out local suppliers and failing to provide sustainable structures for local employment. In their place, pointedly, they suggest that this approach perpetuates the condition it's trying to improve. Next is offshoring. Offshoring is a complicated strategic question, and without considering the full context of the questions facing the firm within its external environment, a strategist could easily make a short sighted decision. As US wages increase and with improvements in communications and transportation, many US companies offshored their activities. Often, manufacturing operations were closed down in the United States and performed in a country where the labor costs were much cheaper. The result has been the loss of thousands of jobs in the US, with plants closed down and communities left devastated. Another aspect of offshoring has been in the service sector, with US firms setting up their call center abroad, along with IT services and even accounting services. Importantly, offshoring impacts the working conditions of people around the world, generally in the poorest economies with the less labor protections. Workers in the agricultural and garment industries are particularly vulnerable to labor exploitation in the global supply chain, and global concerns about child labor and well documented. The ethical question is offshoring ethical? Well, justifications can be made on both sides of the issue. US companies compete in a global marketplace, and the dominant argument has been that if they had to pay US wages, they could not compete internationally. Also, in 2019, before the COVID 19 pandemic, the United States had record low unemployment, so the need to return jobs to the United States was questionable. Conversely, the loss of good jobs and the resulting blight of closed facilities in communities across the country are just not worth the advantage of sharing, in the opinion of some. As of 2018, efforts are being made by the federal government to encourage manufacturers to return to the United States, which include imposing additional tariffs on some goods made abroad. One outcome of the COVID 19 pandemic was the realization that the United States depends on the foreign countries for many essential products, such as pharmaceuticals and face masks. This dependency, especially on China, a political adversary, gave more merit to the argument of the reducing offshoring. According to Roberts 2018, other countries besides the United States pursue cheap labor costs. Sometimes this can lead to increased labor exploitation abroad, as foreign manufacturers compete against each other on price. This can even lead to labor exploitation at home, with the threat of offshoring to reduce wages and benefits. Conversely, ethical companies have produced the opposite effect abroad, making their suppliers pay fair wages if they want their business. Child labor has been reduced in developing countries because US firms required their suppliers not use child labor. In an interesting twist, some industries are turning to the American South for cheap manufacturing labor. Next is environment, climate change, or sustainability. Another debate involving multiple worldwide stakeholders relates to environmental sustainability and global warming. As in offshoring, there are opposing forces that tip the scale one way or the other. On one side is the health of the economy and business environment. The opposing side is the health of the planet and its inhabitants, such as people, animals, and plant life. As environmental forces gain traction and laws and regulations are implemented by governments, some believe this hurts the economy, businesses, and employment. On the flip side, as regulations are loosened, others believe it contributes to increased pollution, poorer human health, and global warming with all its implications for growth, rising levels, and loss of animal and plant species. These arguments have been going on since the early 1970s with the passage of the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act by Congress. Some take the position that the dichotomy of opposing forces does not have to exist, that movements towards clean, renewable energy sources or reducing pollution are overall good for the business environment, stimulating innovation, efficiency, and job creation. Even though it may cost a manufacturer millions of dollars to retrofit their plant to reduce pollution, This cost can be made up and the overall impact is positive. The pendulum swings back and forth on this issue, often depending on who is in the power in Washington. European countries have taken the lead in sustainability with significant conversion to wind power for electricity generation, including China, India, and emerging economies lag behind. Next is global economic inequality. In 1990, approximately 36% of the world's population live in extreme poverty. The World Bank defines extreme poverty as living on less than $1.90 per day. Fortunately, this rate has been consistently declining about 1 percentage point annually, and 2015, the percentage of people worldwide living in extreme poverty was 10%. Approximately 68 million people are no longer considered in extreme poverty. China is a prime example of poor people moving to cities to take manufacturing jobs, with the result of millions elevating into the middle class. Created such a drop in those living extreme poverty. These people have benefited from the increase in global business and foreign direct investment that have impacted developing countries in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Offshoring to low-wage countries, although controversial, has helped millions move from an agrarian lifestyle of poverty to a steady job with steady income. The increase in global trade, particularly in commodities produced by poorer countries, help in this effort. Likewise, the corporate social responsibility efforts of companies manufacturer in poorer countries insisted on their partners and supply chains to pay a living wage, pay men and women equally, and eliminate child labor, which meant more children receive an education. According to Walton 2019, it is important to understand that even though there has been significant improvements in the number of people worldwide living in extreme poverty, nearly half of the world's population still lives in poverty. Approximately 46% lives on less than 5.50 per day and 25% live on less than $3.20 per day. Progress has been made, but there is still a long way to go. Since 2015, the rate of decrease in extreme poverty has slowed. The world goal of reaching 3% living in extreme poverty by 2030 is doubtful. Several more recent factors slowed down the decline even more. In 2018 to 2019, the United States implemented tariffs on many products being imported into the country. This had the effect of slowing international trade, lowering manufacturing volumes abroad, and impacting the job growth seen earlier in poorer countries. The trend of reversing offshoring by U.S. companies, called onshoring, will slow the rate as jobs transition to the United States. Lower commodity prices also influenced the decline. The COVID-19 pandemic had tremendous negative impact on the world economy with a long-term effect of increasing the poverty rate. COVID-19 caused economic activity to decline worldwide and employment in poorer countries dropped off considerably. The last one is the COVID 19 mini case. The worldwide pandemic created by the COVID 19 virus had tremendous impact on businesses domestically and globally. For some, sales increased dramatically, such as in the grocery and medical ventilator industries. For most, however, volume shrunk as countries mandated stay at home orders and social distancing. Local and national economies across the world were devastated, creating vast numbers of unemployed. Governments were tempted to open the economy back up as soon as possible, and sometimes even when the incidence of infections and of hospitalization were still on the rise. That this conflicted decision was also deliberated by executives and owners of business large and small. The pandemic created an ethical challenge for both political leaders and citizens. Open up to get the economy going and people back to work and school, but risk raising infection rates or continue to lock down to control and diminish the impact of the virus but keep people unemployed or some balance in between. As if you are the governor of a state, here are some questions that you need to answer. Should lockdown continue at the cost of more unemployment over a longer time frame or open the economy up at the expense of more coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and even deaths? What do you do? Second question is, suppose you are the CEO of a 200-person company that makes specialized parts for airplanes. You outsource the manufacturing to another company in Mexico. With the coronavirus outbreak, you initially followed the governor's guidance, closed the office, and had people work from home. Productivity is suffering, and you have a lab where 30 people work in two shifts who cannot work from home. You have paid them for the first 4 weeks anyway, but now you are running in the red with sales down. What do you do? Third question is, in the midst of this chaos, there are strategic opportunities for those firms positioned to take advantage of the new environment. What might some of those opportunities be? The last question is, suppose you own Sharkies in Bloxburg. Students are gone and your business has collapsed. Now you're closed per the governor's order and all staff are for laugh. You tried to stay open for takeout only, but it didn't work. The governor has announced that phase 2 will start next week and you can open with 25% capacity. It's July. There are a few students around with many more expected in August. You have enough cash in the bank to stay close and pay the bills until the semester starts. You lose even more money if you open now at 25% capacity and have to pay staff. They need their job. However, coming back also increases the risk of infection. What do you do? What's the best decision? You first decide that you hate these ethical dilemmas. What? Conclusions. This chapter explains the role of boards of directors in the corporate governance of organizations such as large, publicly traded corporations. Wise boards work to manage the agency problem that creates a conflict of interest between top managers such as the CEO and other groups with a stake in the firm. When boards fail to do their duties, numerous scandals may ensue. Corporate scandals became so widespread that new legislation such as the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002 has been developed with the hope of impeding future actions by executives associated with unethical or illegal behavior. Companies have adopted practices such as ethics, science codes, and corporate social responsibility activities to improve their accountability to the communities and society deserve. Globally, businesses' activities have lowered poverty rates, but ethical issues remain regarding balancing competing interests on many issues such as offshoring, pollution, sustainability, and economic inequality. That's the end of my report. I hope you learned something. Keep safe and God bless all.